My name is Peter Jordan. I live and come from the wonderful county of Carlow, so please come visit anytime. We set up Slua back in 2017, myself and my colleague Joanne Moore. My background really is in theatre and opera and dance and cultural events, so I spent many years working with the likes of Mockness and Druid and Irish National Opera and all this. So if you come to an opera stage anytime soon, there's a good chance I'll be back there somewhere, So Slua, obviously the Irish for crowd, and our thing is principally working with all types of events, but our a lot of what we do is kind of cultural events. Like we would be principal kind of safety support for likes of Bram Stoker Festival in Dublin. We do a lot of occupational stuff as well. So even for the likes of Bram Stoker, we're looking at a lot of site-specific stuff. We could be doing like kind of large-scale events in Dublin Castle, catering to like a couple of thousand people, down to over near Gosh there, and you're kind of dealing with kind of waterway stuff as well, So our spectrum and what we do would be very, very broad. So what we're going to kind of talk through today is event safety, and event safety is a very, very broad subject, and it's kind of like even for today, there's a lot of stuff which is kind of headline stuff, which could be more kit out for events that are, for like 1,000 people or 2,000 people, but they're equally applicable for like right down to 5 people, 10 people. You know what I mean? So it's just there's a spectrum there in the bandwidth, and I think it's just about it's like a smorgasbord of what maybe suits you and your particular event. So what we're going to go through is the responsibilities as an event organizer, what you have, the considerations within the unique settings of a heritage site, maybe some tools for safe event planning, and also, as I kind of said, no event is the same as the next, so everything is different. So it's kind of leaning into, I suppose, what that difference is, and no model kind of fits all. And I think, kind of as Ronan said, it takes a village. So it takes a lot of commitment from everybody, and a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge, and it's kind of delving into all those kind of different knowledge kind of pockets that you have in your communities, and kind of come up with the kind of best result. And I think what Ronan said was very, very apt insofar as if you're a first-time event organizer, starting small and learning from that and applying that on your gig for the next year and the next year, whatever, we kind of stand in good favor, because there's a lot of events out there that start overly ambitious on year one, and it just gets stuck in the weeds of it, So just to bear that in mind. So the responsibilities, unfortunately, as an organizer, there is a duty of care there, and that doesn't. That's in legislation. So if you read that, it's like organisers owe a duty of care to ensure that the visitors do not suffer injury or damage due to dangers on the premises. And as an event organizer, this duty includes your staff, which includes your volunteers, includes all the attendees, includes contractors on site, includes site visitors, other third parties, so trespassers, and this duty cannot be outsourced. And you need to really bear that in mind. So it's when you're bringing people onto your event, they are your guests. So there's an obligation there, and that's a legal obligation. So you have to be very, very aware of that. And that's covered within the legislation of the Occupiers Liability Act in 1995, and also the Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act 2005, and the associated regulations and code of practice of that. And I know a lot of people in the workplace will be very, very much aware of their obligations, and everybody has a safety statement from where to work. And in essence, a lot of what we're doing here is the event plan is a continuation or an extension of that safety policy. And I know for some people that can be it can be quite overwhelming to deal with that, but it's not intended to be like that. If anything, it's to offer a process and a way through and a systematic approach to kind of planning out your event. So it's just to understand what those responsibilities are. So I suppose there are a number of kind of considerations for an event site, and we kind of look at them as like, okay, tickets. Are we going to ticket it? Are we not going to ticket it? If we're going to ticket it, is it going to be a free event? Is it going to be a paid event? All of these things to consider. A lot of time, what people will say, well, tickets is that you can stagger who come. When people come to the event. Like obviously, if you're going to do something over the weekend, there are certain windows that would be like, let's say, mid-afternoon on Saturday will be really busy, where maybe the morning on a Saturday or Friday afternoon may not. So the advantage with ticketing is that it kind of it gets audiences and attendees to come into slotted time, so you've got more chance to manage the experience for them. So it's decisions you have to make, where it's going to be daytime, or it's going to be nighttime, it's going to be nighttime, you're going to need lighting, what the implications are for all that, and etc. Again, what Rowan said about the audience experience, and the audience experience starts from the first time you announce the event, whether online, to your last post event. So the actual experience is, the event experience isn't about the time they spend with literally in the physical environment, it's about pre and post. How people arrive is a big thing. So public transport, car parking. If you're going to have car parking, how suitable is that car park? You know, like if you've got like 100 or 200 people, there's a kind of calculation that you can figure out, well, it's maybe 2 or 3 people per car, and you kind of break it all down. You're like, okay, 50 or 60 cars, how am I going to get them in? If it's a multiple day event and if it rains on day one, do I have overflow, etc.? You know, so it's all of these kind of considerations. Site capacity, so including staff, how much space do I have? Like dwell time is how much time an attendee will look at something. So you kind of need to figure that out. If you've got a high point of attraction, how many people can you cater for? Like if you've got a high point of attraction, let's say the Book of Kells, it can only really deal with maybe 2 or 3 people at one time, and if they're going to stay there for 20 minutes, then you kind of go, okay, well, how is this going to work through? So it's all of those kind of considerations. How an audience is going to move around the place, accessibility, if people who've got mobility issues or other impairments, or you know, how are they going to get around your event site, and how they're going to join the experience. Stuff like toilets, water, welfare, concessions. If you've got vendors there, where do you put them? How do they get on? If they've got like a truck, how do they get on? How do they get off? If you've got waste, obviously everybody's trying to work with a zero waste policy, but the reality is we have waste. So how do we do with that? Medical, do we need to put medical support in? Like if we're going to do a walk, or if we're going to do something on the water, like how do we factor all that in? Weather implications is also a massive thing. If you're going to, like temporary structures, might be something like a marquee or a stretch tent or gazebos or fencing. Wind plays a big role, you know. We're all used to doing events, and where wind plays a massive issue. If you look at the ploughing match a couple of years ago, and we all had these images of gazebos travelling across the site, but that's the reality of living in Ireland. And if we have to cancel the gig, how do we do that? How do we tell our attendees? Do we use our kind of, like if it's a mailing list, or if it's a local media and stuff like that? So also if we have people who are coming for the gig and they need to be forewarned about stuff like maybe about ground, if they're going for a workshop, maybe they need to dress accordingly. If it's going to be outdoors, they need to dress accordingly. So if it's going to be sunny, if it's going to be raining, if it's going to be windy, etc. So it's just to kind of give the attendees as much information as they have, so they enjoy the event to the optimum. Event signage, so obviously the amount of events you go on to and the signs are at that height, and it's like, okay, well, that doesn't really mean much, you know what I mean? So stuff is elevated so people can see it. It's size, so people can read it from a distance. If it's pictorial, if it's in text, people tend to, especially if you've got people maybe who don't have spoken English or whatever, so they can see language or whatever, you know. So it's all of that, is to kind of think it through. Then for a lot of stuff, we go into heritage sites. It's about exclusionaries, barrier areas. If you want to protect a structure or protect an area, how do you do that? Do you use barriers? Do you use tape, etc.? If you do tape, how do you need to staff it as well? So it's considerations like that. A lot of what we do is dealing with like volunteers and with your event staff, and it's you may run the event yourself, but the attendees will never get to meet you, but they'll meet your staff, they'll meet your volunteers, and they'll meet your whoever's doing your information, for instance, to make sure they are the front-facing side of your event. So it's about making sure they're adequately briefed and they are aware of what you're trying to do, the schedule, where key, let's say, how your event is laid out. So questions will come to them. They won't come to you, they'll go to them. So it's to make sure that they're adequately briefed. Also, if you've got contractors on site, it is the more pedantic side of it, but insurance is a massive issue of what we do. And there's an obligation on you as an event organizer, if a contractor comes on site, that they are suitable, they are competent, and they have an obligation to provide you with an event-specific risk assessment as well, and to provide their insurance. Now, a lot of time, and the question of insurance is very noted, because it's very difficult at the moment. But there is an obligation on you to make sure that the contractors are suitable for the work that's being entailed. And you ask them for a risk assessment that's specific to the event, and their insurances, make sure that's compliant with your insurance provider. Then there's site services. Now, I know that likes of trackways, well, if you're dealing with like a protected site, do we need to put out ground protection? How do you need to put out fire extinguishers? Do you need to, put out tents? Do you need to put out barriers? And power distribution is a lot of time people look at generators and how that works, and generators are noisy, they're dirty, etc. Sustainability, and so I just put up this picture is an Instagrid. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of it, but it's kind of, as technology moves around, we've kind of got battery systems like an Instagrid, which is maybe a 2 or 3 kilowatt battery inside there, which is more than ample to supply PA systems, kind of small, like it probably wouldn't do kettles and stuff like that, but it means you can do a show in the middle of a forest anyway. I see somebody nodding their head at the back, and you might be aware of them. But there is like technology, there is a lot we can do, you know what I mean? So I suppose it's just kind of just broadening that out, Again, it's about maximising accessibility within protected areas. There's a lot of people, mobility, if we're looking to ramp, if we're going to get a wheelchair in, etc. So how do we do that? How do we think that through? Safeguarding is obviously a massive thing of what we do as well. And so it's about having a child protection policy. And a lot of organisations have this, so it's much the same as going in with the tidy towns as a network, or whatever your local organisation is you're building on whatever is pre-existing. So it's about being, I suppose, pragmatic in that as well. But also lost and found children, that happens everywhere, every gig. That's the meat and drink of any gig, is a lost child. That's it. So it's how you put those systems in place and make sure everybody's suitably briefed and informed. It comes back to your volunteers' briefings. A modal split is a very fancy way of how people are going to arrive. Are they going to arrive in a train? Are they going to arrive in a car, walking, etc.? So it's about having those conversations. And advice then is the AGS is on Garda Síochána. So depending on the scale of your event, you talk to your local statutory agencies and you get their commitment. And it's very pragmatic approach. So again, park and ride, the amount of gigs that you do, and park and ride is very, very popular, because it means people can get in and get off site, and it works very, very well. Medical coverage as well. There's amazing resources out there like Civil Defence, Order Malta, etc. Now, I know I'm kind of whizzing through a lot of this, so I appreciate it's a lot of information to take in. Again, this is just a smorgasbord. There is kind of tools out there, and one is called a dim ice. Now, this it can be for normal or for emergency, whatever. But the intention of it is that if you look down the right hand side, it goes design, information management, and across the top it goes ingress, circulation, egress, which means entrancing, circulation, as you leave. So the whole idea is that if you've got a site and you look at design and entrancing, that could be, well, how do people come in? How do people come in? Do you need if it's going to be ticketed, do you need scanners? Like if it's scanners and if it's bright light, they don't like that. So you probably need cover at your front gate. Information is then signage. So how do people, how do you sign outside? How do you do external traffic? You probably want to be, if you've got traffic on the road, you don't want to be putting that at your entrance. You might want to be doing that maybe 2 or 3 kilometres back at the main principal junctions. And management, how you staff it, you know what I mean? So where do you put it? So it's basically a matrix that kind of offers kind of every point of the event and what considerations you need to put in place. So circulation might be layouts, how you do queues, if you've got vendors or concessions, where you put them. Weather is a big thing. Like obviously with sun is fantastic, but then if you're during the day, people might need shade, Obviously if it's raining, people need cover for rain. So it's all of this. Management of stewards, so you look at circulation, briefing, lost children, etc. And then if you look over here, design and exiting, it's like a lot of times with gigs, if you have maybe a couple of hundred and you have a very set finish, then you have a couple of hundred people leaving your event all at the one time. So it's kind of part of the thing is that do you want to do a soft ending or do you want to do a hard ending? A hard ending might be if you have a band on stage, let's say, and it's your headline act and they finish. And then you've got everybody leaving at the same time. So everybody's going out through the gates and everybody's going out through the car park and there's congestion. So it's just to think all of kind of these through. So it's a kind of matrix to help with that. I know there's a scale for a lot of people, this isn't going to even touch it, but maybe there's parts of it that does help, like, you know. So with the safety assessment, there is an obligation for you to assess your gig on on whatever grounds that is. A lot of the thing is slip, trips and falls. So you talk to any insurance company, that's what it is. It's from an occupational point of view, it's manual handling, slip, trips and falls, and being, vehicle collision, whatever. Slip, trips and falls. So there's a requirement on you to look at these and to assess your event and systematically to kind of work through it. Now, as well as that, this is just an indicative list. You are the experts in the room of what you do, and the expectation is that you use that expertise to inform whatever assessment that you would do. So what we have here is you look at slip, trips and falls, if you look at emergency arrangements, if you go for a walk, what happens if like you're in the middle of a woods or whatever, you're in the waterway, how do you manage this? Look at accessibility. Fire hazards is always a big thing, especially on heritage sites. So how do you work through that? And look at structural safety. If you're going to go into, suppose an unused building or like a civic building and you're doing a tour. So then there's a logical and a pragmatic approach to the visitor experience and what they're likely to where they're likely to go, so it's just assessing all of this. Medical cover, the weather is always a big part. I'm not sure if fireworks are a big thing for any of you, but they're significant of interest obviously to the fire service. And then site-specific risks. So again, you are the experts in what you do, so it's just about being pragmatic with all that. From a scale point of view, I'm not sure if any of you are going to go over the 4,999, but if you want to, there is an obligation there for an event license. So that's a very, it's a kind of statutory agency approach. So that means you're going in, you're doing a planning application, it's 16 weeks in advance, blah, 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 blah. But that's not to say that actually, fundamentally, the approach that they take for a large-scale event, in a way is kind of very similar to the approach that you will take even for an event for 20 or 30 people, maybe with bit less paperwork, but there is just to be aware of that, so a lot of the norm now is insurance companies will require you to produce an event management plan. The event management plan, I mean, there are templates online which are kind of, and I'm aware of a certain amount of county councils that have generic event management templates as well, and they're fairly solid. So if you do a little bit of looking, you'll find them. But there are basic contents which should go into all of them, and a lot of them would actually probably carry through from existing. Maybe if you're going to a building or an organisation, there's safety statements there, and a lot of it is actually a continuation of that. But it's specific to the event. So what you're doing is event overview, obviously, at the name of the event, date, time, location, what the event description is, the attendance of the event. You could look at if there's other events on in the area at the time. You could use as previous event experience, how did it get on last year or the year before, is there any kind of history of anything? And then you'd include like a site map and layout. I mean, what's amazing now is Google Maps. So Google Maps, you can draw anything onto it. It's fantastic and it's incredibly informative, So you're looking at that, then you're looking at your safety and risks, like what we talked about, your risk assessments, so you're looking at what could happen, you're kind of working all that through and you're putting in your control measures. Health and safety policy, a lot of that is actually the front page of your safety statement a lot of people would have, and it's a commitment to be compliant with legislation. So it sounds a lot more heady than it is. Crowd management is about the audience experience. So how, when attendees come to your event, what their experience is going to be, how they're going to come in, how they're going to circulate, how they're going to leave. So it's quite pragmatic. Temporary structures could be anything we talked about, tents, barriers, anything extra you're bringing in on site, just to kind of put a bit more kind of form, like who the contractors are, etc. traffic and pedestrian plan, how people are going to arrive, how people are going to late or are going to leave. Emergency planning, depending on the type of event you're doing. Again, I know there was talk about waterways earlier, but obviously that would be thinking about water safety. So it's how you put those procedures in place, like emergency procedures, evacuation procedures, what your contact is with emergency services, etc. And then a lot of the EMP at the back will be insurance certificates, any kind of license and permits that you need to get for your events. Obviously a contact list, so you're kind of whoever you're kind of, you've got like a head steward or an event organizer or a key contractor, so it's all this. So the EMP is just a document of approach, and you'll have in theory you should have an EMP for anything. It can be a single page, page or 2 pages, or it can be anything up to 100, 200, 300 pages. So, so I suppose the takeaway from today, and again, I know it's a lot of information to take in, but the intent is the event management plan is an event-specific risk assessment. So it's there to, if anything, it should be there to help you to kind of think through the life cycle of your event and think through the audience experience of what your event should be. Obviously, engage with local services, engage with neighbours, businesses, and Garda Síochána, fire services, like there was Waterways Ireland, early, so that there's an agreement. I think they don't like surprises, so if you get in there early and talk them through, it'll work in your favour. Insurance, again, understand your insurance coverage and your contractor's requirements. The event checklist, I know Ronan had some checklists earlier, but there's a lot of checklists available kind of online or whatever. Accident report forms is a big thing. When you get your insurance thing, you need to document it. If there isn't an accident, and if you don't document it, it didn't happen. No, sorry, for the wrong reasons. As in, you need to document stuff, because if anything was to happen, you need to be aware, you need to have a history of it. Again, ensure clarity of role, staff briefings, inductions, so that when your events volunteers are on site, that they know what they're about, they know what their job is, and they know how to inform attendees. So final reminders this is about balancing that audience engagement, heritage protection, balancing the safety of your attendees, and obviously what's primary about this is the audience experience for them. You know what I mean? So ultimately what we all want is for them to leave and have the best event experience. So how do we do that? Talk to your insurance provider, and the guidance for event organisers. A lot of the legislation with regards to code of practice for events is quite dated in Ireland. I think the last code of practice was like 1996 or whatever, but this document is from Dublin City Council, and it's a guidance for event organisers. It's extremely comprehensive, and it's kind of more probably intended for events of scale, but it's a fantastic resource. So if you're looking for specific information, it's there and it's readily available. So I think that's it. That's the whirlwind tour of event safety.